Hello folks, this is Sullla once again. You're going to be watching another video here where we look at one of the upcoming patches, patch 3.8. This is the Aatrox patch. We're going to go through. This is a fairly sizable patch. We've actually had about a month since the last patch came out. A nice amount of time, in my opinion. I like having patches come out about every 3 to 4 weeks. When they're on the 2-week patch schedule, it always feels too fast, but had a nice amount of time. It feels like we're about ready for some new stuff in the game, and I hope that they do more of this in the future since it's been a while. Alright, let's look first at Aatrox. He is apparently going to be enabled at some point in time, not immediately after the patch comes out, but I expect we'll be seeing Aatrox rather soon. Now, there is no info listed here on the League of Legends official forums. Let's go ahead and pull up some of his stuff from the League of Legends wiki. We'll talk a little bit about him. So they have put out the champion spotlight for Aatrox. He, of course, looked extremely overpowered, but every champion always does in the champion spotlight. We'll just look briefly at some of his stuff that's here. His passive is Bloodwell. Whenever he uses abilities that cost health, he stores the health cost in the Bloodwell. So basically, over time, he stores up his passive that gives him like this sort of passive health. When he dies, when he takes fatal damage, Bloodwell activates. Aatrox is placed in stasis for 3 seconds. Over time, the Bloodwell is emptied, and Aatrox restores health equal to its contents. It has a static cooldown, is not affected by CDR. So, in other words, this is yet another version of the champion comes back to life when he dies passive. Really a little uncreative. This is the 3rd champion we've seen this on now. It was neat when Anivia had this because it was unique on Anivia. Also, Anivia is a phoenix, so it makes sense that Anivia comes back to life after dying. But it's also been applied to Zac, and now it's on Aatrox as well. Too many champs with the same come back to life after dying passive. I know this one functions a little bit differently because you have to stack up the health, but not a big fan of this. A little uncreative, in my personal opinion. Would have liked to have seen something a little bit different. And plus, it's just always very irritating to play against a champ that comes back to life after dying. Okay, Q, don't put too much in the numbers here. The numbers can very easily change because this is taken from the PvE, but his Q is a gap closer. Aatrox takes flight and lands at a targeted location, deals physical damage. Also knocks up anyone in the center of the blast. Granted, this is a skill shot, but there's a lot on this skill. This is probably his 1-point skill, although it's hard to say until he comes out. It's a gap closer. You can use it to jump in. It's an escape. You can use it to run out. And it's also a knock-up as well, which will interrupt channeled effects like teleport, Karth Assault, etc. So there's a lot on this skill. Probably a little too much on one skill. And this is one thing that a lot of people have looked at and said, this champ is going to be problematic from a balance standpoint. And I agree, by the way. Next up, W, Bloodthirst. It's a toggle on-off switch. It doesn't cost anything. Aatrox is monoless, by the way. Does not use mana, for those who are curious. Toggle off. Aatrox heals himself on every 3rd attack, so he gets free sustain. If he's below 50% health, he heals for a pretty ridiculous amount. In the video that they showed in the Champion Spotlight, it was pretty insane, the amount he was healing for. Oh gee, a monoless champion with huge sustain. Well, that's never caused balance problems in the past. And then the toggle on effect is Aatrox deals bonus physical damage on every 3rd attack at the cost of some of his own health. I don't know how much this is going to be because we don't have the final numbers yet. But so basically he gets huge sustain when he turns it on one, and then he deals extra damage when he flips the switch on the other one. Blades of Torment, this is his biggest damage skill. It's a straight line skill shot nuke, sends damage forward in like this blade. The blade gets thinner as it passes. And you can see this one deals magic damage. Also slows, by the way, because, hey, we can't have any skill that doesn't do, like, 3 different things at once. My personal thought is he probably will level W first, and then E second, and then Q third, but 1 point in Q, but it's hard to say, I mean, until he comes out. That's just my initial guess from looking at it. Then finally, the ultimate, no cost. Again, Aatrox is monoless. He's just cooldown-based, basically. Draws in the blood of his foes for the next 12 seconds, gains bonus attack speed and bonus attack range. His attacks are still considered melee, so he gains a lot of attack speed and bonus magic damage. Let's see. I guess when he activates, his people around him take magic damage. It's what it looks like. He gains a lot of extra attack speed and attack damage. So, overall, how do I feel about this champ? Well, I don't like the kit very much. Not a big fan, just because it seems as though Riot is violating all of the design principles that they have said that they want to avoid. If you look at what's caused problems in the past, what have been the biggest balance issues for League's champions in the past. Monolith casters, high sustain, champions that have gap closers, champions that have multiple forms of crowd control. He's got an escape, a jump, a gap closer, that also is a knockup, and he also has a slow, and he's got all this sustain. Aatrox may not be overpowered when he comes out. It depends on what the numbers look like. But the problem with his kit is it's designed in such a way that he's either going to be extremely overpowered or he's going to be useless, one or the other. And that's why I don't like his kit, because it's specifically designed in such a way that it's almost impossible to balance. In the same way that we saw Irelia have this problem, and we saw Vlad have this problem, and we saw Rengar have this problem. I mean, it's just the same thing over again. So it just puzzles me as to why they would continue to make the same bizarre design choices that they do when they come up with champions. Sure, from sort of a theme perspective, seems like an interesting champ, but the kit looks like it will be very difficult to balance, and he's either going to be too strong or too weak. I suspect he will be too strong when he comes out. It's in Riot's financial interest to have champions come out that are very strong, and then have them be sort of overpowered for a couple weeks, and then slowly nerf them down. And they've done that quite a bit with champions in the past, because it is kind of in their interest to do that, because then everyone will buy the new champion. I'm not saying that they've consciously done that, but the design of this champ is very puzzling, because it certainly looks like it's going to cause major problems. I guess we'll see. He's not out yet. We'll see. But it sure looks like it's going to be a problem, is all I'm going to say. It's another one of those kits that is inherently difficult to balance, and looks like it's going to cause issues. But anyway, we'll see. We'll see when he comes out. Okay, other stuff in this patch. There's a lot more in this patch. This is going to go on for some time. Minor changes to Annie. They gave Tibbers a bit of a buff. Tibbers, the actual bear, his health has been increased. This is, I guess, nice, but not really that big of a deal. They've also increased his MR, but by 5 at all ranks, so that's not really that much. Here's the big change, though. They've greatly decreased the mana cost on Tibbers from 225 at max rank down to 100 at all ranks. And this is a big buff. This is the biggest change to summon Tibbers. Annie, as one of the older champions, I've mentioned this before in other patch videos, older champions tended to have longer cooldowns, and they tended to have much higher mana costs. That, again, reflects the fact that League of Legends evolved from Dota in the past, and that's generally the way that a lot of the champion or hero abilities, I should say, work in Dota. They tend to have longer cooldowns and cost much more mana. League has tended to be focused on using skills that are much more often. You know, you can use them more often, but in exchange they tend to be weaker, and they don't have as big of a sort of a game-changing effect as in Dota. So this is changing Annie to bring her more in line with sort of current champion design. But this is a big deal because I've played Annie quite a bit in the past, and one of her big problems is you have to build mana on her, because otherwise she runs out of mana too fast, even with her Q resetting on cast. So this actually helps her a lot. This means she does not have to itemize as much mana. You don't have to go into Rod of Ages anymore to make sure you have enough mana to do your combo. Annie's biggest problem is she doesn't have a way to initiate. Again, older champ, she does not have a gap closer. She's very reliant on flash initiating with Tibbers. If they increase the range of summon Tibbers, if they increase the range so you could do your combo from a larger distance, that is what would make Annie viable. We'll see if they ever do that, but that would be the thing. If you wanted to make Annie playable, that was what you'd have to do. Make it so she is not so reliant on flash initiating, because she is right now. Her short range is what kills her, but this helps. This certainly helps her a little bit. So it's a nice little thing for anyone who plays Annie. Ashe got a rework to her passive. This is a nice change. People have long complained about Ashe's passive. Her passive focus used to give her critical strike chance when she was out of combat. Now she gains something called focus stacks instead of gaining critical strike chance. And when that focus stack gets up to 100, you're guaranteed to critically strike. Ashe will critically strike on her next attack when she reaches 100 focus stack. So that's quite nice. It's no longer like this chance to critically strike. You're guaranteed a crit when you hit 100 focus, and you gain focus when you're not attacking. So that's actually quite nice. And by the way, it still works similarly to the old passive. Initial focus stacks equal to her crit strike chance. So if you build an Infinity Edge and you've got that 25% crit chance, she starts at 25 focus stacks or whatever. So that's actually quite nice. It's less random number generator based, something that Riot's tried to do over the years, make League less dependent on like number rolls, and it just makes her passive a lot more reliable. You know when you're going to get a crit, which is much, much better, obviously. So a nice little change for Ashe. It's not going to bring her back into the rotation of AD champs that we see competitively, But Ashe has always got that niche role of if a team wants to have an AD that can initiate at global range with her arrow. So Ashe, I think Ashe is fine. This is a nice little quality of life change. And, Ashe is in good shape. She's definitely playable in certain team comps. Works well in high crowd control team comps. And of course, she always scales great late game, and she is the queen of kiting. Always has been, always will be. Okay, Corki, they fixed a bug where Missile Barrage would sometimes fail to deal damage. Very nice. Hecarim. Hecarim, interesting decisions here. Hecarim's long been perceived as one of the strongest junglers, particularly in North America. They don't seem to like Hecarim as much in Europe for some reason. But Hecarim has been seen as a strong choice. He often gets banned in ranked team play. Now, what they make it look like in the description is his strong sustained fighter was blowing up squishy targets. We've taken away the landing damage, blah, blah, blah. This is honestly more of a buff to Hecarim than a nerf here. Okay, so what they did was they changed the way his ult work. No longer deals damage at the end locations. It's the riders who now deal damage. I mean, that's a little bit different. They did increase the rider damage a little bit. Not by much, but by a little bit. So I guess this is a slight nerf to his ultimate, but in all honesty, people don't pick Hecarim because of the damage on his ultimate. They pick Hecarim because of his great sustain in team fights, because he scales really well in the late game, and because of how he repositions people with his ult, is that fear effect on the ult. And this doesn't affect any of that. So as a nerf, this doesn't really hurt Hecarim at all. And then meanwhile, Hecarim gets a rather sizable buff on his E, on his devastating charge. This is his movement speed skill. If Hecarim's target is beyond narrow terrain, he will now leap over the terrain to the target, and he can now jump over small ledges. He actually, apparently, I saw this in the patch preview, he can apparently jump through the golem wall as well. Like, if he uses his devastating charge on the blue golem, apparently he can jump through that wall too. So this increases his mobility by a lot. The fact that, like, if Ezreal blinks over one of the little jungle walls, like, say the one right by Baron or the one right by the dragon, you now follow them with your E, with your devastating charge. That's a pretty big buff to Hecarim, whereas this nerf doesn't do much at all. So it's a bit of a puzzling change if you wanted to nerf Hecarim, which it sounds like they wanted to do, because he's probably going to be stronger after this change than before. Now, I think Hecarim's okay. I don't think he's so strong that he is like an insta-ban. He is a strong choice. So I don't think that this is the end of the world, but I am surprised. Let me put it that way. I am surprised because I think Hecarim is stronger after this change compared to before. And I was not expecting that. I was expecting them to reduce some of his damage so that he didn't scale so well. But, oh well, Hecarim players, you're not going to be too sad by this patch, is all I'm going to say. Okay, Karma, they have increased some small little buffs to Karma. They continue to keep buffing Karma. I actually think she's going to be a decently strong mid laner in the right circumstances after this. So let's look at what they did. They have reduced the mana cost on Inner Flame. This is her Q. They've reduced the mana cost. They do not say what it was before, and I'm not going to go look it up, but they've reduced it. I don't know what it was. And they've also increased the explosion radius on her Mantrid Q, I believe that is. Because oh no, wait a minute. Does her Q normally lead to the explosion radius? Yes, no, never mind. She does have a explosion on her Q normally without the mantra bonus. Okay, so they very slightly increased the size and they decreased the mana cost. Nothing earth-shattering, but quality of life buff. This is more sizable here. Focused Resolve, this is her W, this is her jump rope skill. Now gives vision of the unit when rooted. Looks like that was a bug fix. They changed the mantra bonus. No longer heals over time for 25% missing health. Now it heals Karma for 20% of missing health immediately, and another 20% of missing health if the leash is not broken. This is very strong. Can heal up to 40% of her missing health. Now granted, it is missing health. It's not max health. So you would not be using the mantra W if you were near full health. But if you're low in a fight, I mean, 40% of your health, of your missing health back, if you're, down at 20% health or something, that's a very sizable chunk of your life bar. So this is pretty good for Karma, especially this, 20% of missing health immediately, a huge surge in your health on a Mantra W, and then, of course, another 20% if it's not broken. What this means is Karma is sort of a situational mid pick. She's very good against melee champions in mid, ones that have short range. That's what she kind of needs to take advantage of. She's much better against melee than ranged, and champions that are short range, she's able to take advantage of the fact that you don't want to play Karma against someone like Xerath. They'll just, he'll just pick you apart at range or something like that. So Karma's pretty strong in sort of a very situational niche against certain champions in mid that, like I said, are melee based and don't have the range to sit back and take advantage of Karma's own short range, because she's got this great sustain and she's able to trade quite well. She's able to trade very well at short range. I guess that's the way I can put it. She trades well at short range. So she's a situational pick. I don't think she is overpowered or anything by this, but in the right circumstances, she actually can be quite good against certain champs. You don't want to play her against the wrong champs, but against certain champions, she does well. And they fixed a bug here, so okay. Now, Kha'Zix got one of the bigger changes in this patch, and the biggest, let me sort of explain the idea here. The basic idea is Kha'Zix was doing way too many things at once. The problem was his W, his Void Spikes. Everyone would level up the Void Spikes first. He had this gameplay style where he would like sit back with Muramana and he would poke with Void Spikes, his W, from range. And Kha'Zix is intended to be an AD assassin. He like wasn't intended to be this big poke champion. Kind of weird, like that was not the idea. So what they've done is they've shifted the power on Kha'Zix from his Void Spikes to his Q, to his Taste Their Fear. And in other words, they nerfed his W, but they compensated by buffing his Q and by buffing his ultimate, his R, his Taste Their Fear and his Void Assault. And now, unfortunately, I hate the description here. They didn't really talk about what they changed on Kha'Zix. They just, like, most of this stuff, like, they didn't explain what the old numbers were. And I, not being a Kha'Zix player, I'm not too familiar with what the old numbers looked like. So we'll go ahead and we'll look at the wiki page here for Kha'Zix. Now, this also has the updates have already been included on here. But we'll just look at sort of what his kit looks like here. So his passive, when he's not seen, he gains Unseen Threat. In other words, he deals bonus magic damage and slows to isolated targets. Sort of one of his basic things is, or when he's not visible, he gains this passive. I guess this is isolated target is his Q. Never mind. But when he's out of vision, he gains Unseen Threat. His passive, he gains bonus magic damage and slows, and it's actually quite a bit as the game goes on. Lasts until consumed, has no cooldown. Okay, this is now Kha'Zix. This is what's been changed. He's gotten his Q buffed by a lot. Taste Their Fear. This is now Kha'Zix's like big skill. So the passive, he marks isolated out enemies that are by themselves. Active, slashes, deals physical damage, and damage against isolated targets is increased by a lot, by 45%. I don't know what the old number was, but this is higher than it was before. I'm afraid I don't know what it is. The evolution also now adds a percentage of missing health damage as well. Look on here. Taste Their Fear deals an extra 8% of the target's missing health, and that 45% does get applied here, so it's 11% for isolated targets. And evolving the claws also increases the range of Taste Their Fear and auto attacks by 50. 375 is that's getting pretty far up there for something that's supposedly melee. That's actually pretty good range. Most melee champs have a auto attack range. I believe it's like 150, 175, something like that. So that's pretty darn far for a supposed melee attack. But anyway, this skill deals pretty crazy damage. In the past, people leveled up W first, they maxed this first, and they evolved this first. Now, people are going to max Q first, and they're going to evolve this first, is the way that people have been saying. So physical damage, 190 at rank 5, plus 150% bonus AD. And against an isolated target, you can see the damage here, 275 plus 217% bonus AD. Deals crazy damage with an evolved Q. I mean, you are doing like, people are looking at the numbers, you are doing like, you can do like 700 or 800 damage on Q, and by the way, the cooldown is 3 seconds with 25 mana cost. So this is more of what Riot envisioned when they created Kha'Zix, someone who is based around using this skill, based around assassinating people at melee range, not like sitting back and poking with Void Spikes at 1,000 range. So that's more what they intended. So Void Spikes are weaker, but Taste Their Fear is way, way stronger than it was before. Does this make Kha'Zix weaker? Probably not. If anything, he might even be stronger after this change. It's hard to say. I haven't seen enough Kha'Zix play, but he still feels like a very strong champion. He's just a different champion now. He just plays differently. So Void Spikes, now much weaker. People probably will not evolve this skill at all. They'll probably evolve Q first, and then I would assume E second for the reset on the jumps, and then ult last. They also buffed his ult too. Damage reduction while in stealth increased to 50% instead of 40%. Pretty big damage reduction. So Kha'Zix overall, if you're a Kha'Zix player and you are expecting him to get huge nerfs, he didn't get them. He's actually still quite strong. You're going to have to relearn how to play him. But he's still a very good champ. Yeah, it would be my guess. He's just going to be played in a different style. So, yay for not nerfing him into the ground, but, you know, he might even be stronger. It's hard to say. Okay, Cogmaw fixed a bug with Void Ooze. Wasn't reduced by Tenacity. Okay, not a big deal. Lysandra, it's funny what they did with Lysandra. If you read the description, like, let's read this. For a control mage, Lysandra was throwing out a lot of front-loaded damage. The intention of these changes was not only to lower her damage, but to better highlight her in-fight control. Wow, you might say, that sounds like Lysandra's getting nerfed. Quite the opposite. Actually, she's not getting nerfed at all. And I'm going to close that. Instant message. I'll answer that after I'm done recording this video. My friend Speaker is talking to me about our Civ 4 game. Okay, anyway, though, look at this. So let's look at what they did, shall we? They have buffed her W, her Ring of Frost, buffed it quite a bit. Cooldown reduced quite a bit at lower ranks, from 18 at rank 1 down to 14, scaling down to the same number at the end, 10 seconds at rank 5. This is the skill that she levels up second. So this is actually a pretty big deal, because you will keep this at level 1 and for quite some time, until level 8. And then you won't max this out until level 13. So this is actually a pretty big deal. Mana cost also reduced by a lot, from 70 down to 50. Quite nice. And fixed a bug with a root failed to apply if she died. Okay, not a big deal. But this is a major buff to W. Like a big buff. Lower cooldown, less mana cost, same damage. Big buff to that skill. Glacial Path. Cooldown now also begins on initial cast rather than on reactivation, or at the end of the missile. So this is a buff to her E. This is like her claw skill that goes out. The cooldown will begin immediately rather than at the end of it. So this basically cuts the cooldown by about 2 seconds on this skill, based on how people usually use that. So that skill got buffed too. And Frozen Tomb mostly got buffed as well. Self-cast duration increased from 1.5 to 2.5 seconds. That's a big buff. An entire extra second of stasis duration where you can't be targeted. Slow increased as well. The slow is same at rank 1, but goes up to 40% at rank 3. Big buff again. Slow duration increased. And in exchange, they have lowered the damage a little bit. They lowered the damage at higher ranks, from 450 down to 350. So, Lysandra players, yes, you do a little bit less damage with your ult. But everything else sure got buffed. So, overall, buff to Lysandra. Not a nerf at all. Buff to her W, buff to her E. Honestly, I think that this is a buff to her ultimate as well. That self-cast increase by a full second, huge increase. With a Frozen Tomb plus Zanya's, you've got 5 seconds of untargetability. And that's pretty ridiculous. So I guess they thought Lysandra was too weak. I actually thought she was nicely balanced. I thought she was fine. I would have left her alone personally. But she's stronger now. So if you are a Lysandra player, I would say you're happy with these changes, would be my thought. So anyway, I would be pretty happy with this if I'm playing Lysandra. I have not played her much myself. I just played her in a bot game. I didn't really like her playstyle, but some people obviously will. Okay, Nautilus getting a bit of a nerf. They're nerfing his Titan's Wrath. This is his shield. This is his bread and butter skill. They are nerfing the damage at all ranks. So this is a pretty sizable nerf, because this is like his main skill. They've lowered it at first rank, and they've lowered it at max rank. Nautilus was very strong in the last patch. Hopefully he'll just be balanced after this. We shall see. This was probably needed, and hopefully it brings him a little bit back in line. The problem with Nautilus is, much like what I was talking about with Aatrox up here, Nautilus's kit is such in that he's very difficult to balance. He has so much crowd control. If he deals any kind of damage, he's always going to be extremely strong. So if he deals any kind of damage, and if he can jungle and clear at all, he's really strong. So yeah, it's just his kit is difficult to balance. Okay, Poppy, does anyone even care about Poppy? You could be, like, is she even in the game right now? She's getting a rework. So anyway, they have a bug fix with her. Sejuani, after the rework, everybody knew her numbers were too high. So Sejuani is like a straight tank in the jungle, and she was dealing way too much damage. She would build straight tank and still deal a lot of damage. I wouldn't say tons of damage, but she did deal quite a bit. So they are nerfing her, and this is definitely needed. They're nerfing the bonus health ratio on her Northern Winds. This is her, I believe this is her W, the one where she swings the flail around. So they've reduced that, which is good. It was scaled too much. They reduced the slow duration on permafrost down by a half second at all ranks. That's her E. They reduced the slow. And her ultimate, they reduced the stun and slow duration at all ranks by 0.25 seconds. These are sizable nerfs. They are needed nerfs. Sejuani was overgeared after the rework. This nicely balances her, whereby she still has a lot of crowd control, but the trade-off for having all that crowd control is she doesn't deal that much damage. And her CC has been hit a little bit. You know, they've reduced the amount of CC she has. That said, she still brings a lot of crowd control. She's still a good choice. I would still play her over Amumu if you want somebody who is like that tanky crowd control jungler. This just brings her more in line with balance. So these are good changes, in all honesty. Brings her more in line with where she should be. Okay, Sona. Sona getting some fairly sizable changes here, mostly to her. She's got, well, changes to base stats, her Q, and also her W. The biggest changes to her W. Okay, so Sona has been dominating the tournament scene alongside Thresh and like Lulu. It's been like Sona, Thresh, Lulu are like the supports that get played in every tournament. We see the same ones over and over again. So it's not surprising that they're getting nerfs. Lulu has recently received nerfs in recent patches. Sona getting nerfed here. Thresh, very oddly, still not getting any nerfs, even though he's been the strongest support for 4 months now. He's received 2 very minor nerfs, but that's it. I do not know why Thresh continues to avoid nerfs. He is picked or banned in 100% of professional games, so it makes no sense. But anyway, Sona, been a strong pick for a very long time. It made sense that she was going to get some nerfs. That said, this is not too bad for Sona. She's still going to be very playable. Let's look at what they did. They increased her base health. Thank you, Riot. She only had base health of 410, was so low. It was like the same amount as purple caster minion, people used to say. Her base armor also increased. Her base armor was 9, which is like the lowest in the game. So they've given her a little bit of survivability at level 1. It was so low in the past, it was ridiculous. Now that said, they have had to take some of her power away. The base power cord damage has been reduced. This is her Q, the damage on her power cord Q. They reduced it. It used to be 8 times 10 plus 11s. 10 times level, so it was 18 at level 1, and then it was like 18, 28, 38, 48, etc. So you can see it's at level 1 it's 5 less, and then this was 28, so 8 less, then 38, so 11 less, then 48, so 13 less, then 58 or whatever, so 13 less. So it's quite a bit lower. It's about 10 to 13 points lower at most ranks. I believe at like level 18 it goes back to being the same value or very close to it. So this is significantly less damage. You will be dealing less damage on a power cord Q than you did in the past. So keep that in mind. This has reduced Sona's poke. Now, what they've done though is they've changed how her W works. They have fixed a bug. Apparently the power cord W is supposed to reduce attack damage on whoever you put it on by 20%. So the idea was you would, use a power cord W on an AD and it would reduce their damage by 20% for 3 seconds. Apparently that was bugged, and apparently that never worked, ever. Apparently it just had never worked for 18 months straight, and they had never caught that bug. So they have fixed that bug, whereas now the power cord W does in fact reduce the damage of whoever you put it on. So the net effect of this is, for Sona players, and myself being one of them, you don't want to use your power cord on Q anymore. You want to use your power cord on W. Put power cord W on the other AD that you're trading with, and you will basically win trades in bottom lane. So this requires a higher skill cap, and it's a different way of playing Sona. You no longer want to poke with Q. What you want to do is you want to poke, you want to have it set up so anytime there's like a trade, a big fight in bottom lane, you use your W power cord on the other AD. It's going to take some time to get used to doing that, but it's actually quite strong because if you're cutting the other AD's damage by 20% for 3 seconds, that's like a mini exhaust, basically. I mean, really, that's what it is. It's a huge debuff to their damage. So this gives Sona quite a bit of power back in exchange for her nerfs. Now, the other nerfs, they've lowered the duration of the power cord W. Granted, it never worked before, so it's just 3 seconds. This is the biggest change. The bonus armor and MR to yourself and healed ally has been reduced and cut substantially. It's been cut basically in half. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 from 11, 8, 11, 14, 17, 20. So the sort of passive stat gain bonus has been cut sharply, and the passive aura bonus has also been cut sharply. It's been cut in half, cut in by like 2/3 or whatever. So they've basically cut down the passive benefits from W. So in exchange to play Sona, now you have to use the power cord W instead of just like getting the passive bonus. A lot of people don't realize just how strong Sona's passive auras are. That said, they did not nerf the active damage on a Q. They didn't nerf that. They didn't nerf the heal on W. They didn't nerf her ultimate. And they did give her a little bit back in the form of Power Core W and higher base stats. So overall, I think Sona's okay. I do think she's weaker, but not that much weaker. I think she's still playable. So I'm happy with what they did because they did not do the nerf into trash tier thing, which was very possible with Riot. So I think they did these nerfs in a smart way, and I think that it will require Sona players to play smarter in using their power chord on the other AD. That takes some skill to use to get that off at the right moment. So overall, I'm a fan of these changes. I'm just wondering, why is Thresh not being nerfed? He's picked in every professional game. Why did he not get nerfed here? Granted, this is a nerf. They say it's a bug fix. It's not. It's a nerf. That's not a bug. Or if they can say it's a bug, but it really isn't. So, still curious why Thresh is not being nerfed, but the Sona nerfs were pretty intelligent. Okay, Varus fixed a bug where targeting an enemy would cause him to stop moving. Vi has had so many bugs over the months since she's come out, so they fixed more bugs with Vi. Okay. All right, other general champion notes. They have done some stuff with wall jumps, so players don't fail jump walls as often. That's nice. They've also added targeting indicators to show how far back targets will be knocked with things like headbutt, Lee Sin ult, Poppy's charge, is if anyone plays Poppy, Vayne's condemn. So you got a better idea of where you're going to knock people back. And they said they've fixed targeting when enemies use flash for stuff with skills that would interrupt that. Cleaning up these interactions so either the ability won't cast or flash won't be used. It will be one or the other, not both. I have seen some weird stuff with Skarner Impale used with flash before, so that's nice. Just sort of like cleaning out bug fixes. Now, there's a lot more in this patch. I'll try to get through it quickly so this video is not too long, but there's actually quite a bit more in here beyond champion stuff. So, changes to slow zones. Basically what they've done is they've updated how frequently the client checks for slows so that now it checks every quarter second. What this means is when you move out of a slow field, the slow will wear off faster because the client is updating to realize you're out of the slow field more quickly. That's basically what it means, is the client checks this more often, so you get out of slow fields faster. Whereas before, even if you were out of a slow field, like until the client updated to show you were out of the slow field, it wouldn't give you extra movement speed. So basically, this is kind of a nerf to slowing abilities. They've listed all the bunch of slowing abilities here, so they may have to buff these abilities. So this is basically a very minor nerf to all of these skills. And they may end up buffing these later on. But basically, it just means the client checks for slows more often, which is good. Obviously, that's something you want. So you will notice that when you step out of a slow field, you'll start moving faster than you did before. And that was client side, basically. That was the whole thing. Okay, items. Changes some items. Can't talk. Specifically, starting game items. Boots of Speed. Cut in cost from 350 to 325. Boots have been 350 for as long as I've been playing this game. That's about almost 3 years now. So that's a kind of an important change. You can now start Boots 4 pots if you want. I still would not recommend that too often because Boots as a starting item are just kind of weak. But Boots are cheaper now. So I'm going to have to take a little while to get used to that. I don't see that changing too much. But they're cheaper and you might be able to play around with starting items and get Boots and something else more easily now. Other starting items, Doran's Ring. They've decreased the cost, 400 down to 475. And in exchange, they've reduced the cost and reduced the mana restored on kill from 5 to 4 and from 80 to 60 on the health. What this means is you can start with a Doran's Ring and 2 health pots, which sounds kind of nice. That said, I still don't think starting with a Doran's Ring is that good of a starting item. I don't think Doran's Ring and 2 health pots is that great of a start. Maybe on someone, but I think you still do better to start with like a, what's it called? A fairy charm, because that actually builds into something, a tier, or it builds into, I don't know, a chalice or something. But I still don't really like the idea of a Doran's Ring and 2 potions start, but you can do it. You know, you can do that. Doran's Shield, similar thing. They've reduced the cost. You can now start with a Doran's Shield and 1 health pot, not 2, 1 health pot. They've increased the health regen. They've changed the passive. Now blocks 8 damage from champion base attacks, but they've stripped out the armor from Doran's Shield. Again, you can start with a Doran's and a health pot, but I still don't think that that's a very good start for most champs. But maybe we'll see people use this. Maybe. We'll see. Major changes to jungling stuff. Like, big changes to jungling stuff. And we'll get to the actual jungle itself in a minute. But jungling items have been changed. They have taken out the random number generator part of jungle items. Rather than having a chance to deal, like, 200 damage to a minion, now they deal, all the jungling items deal flat bonus magic damage to monsters with every basic attack. That's on the machete, it's on the spirit stone, deals bonus magic damage to monsters with every basic attack. And very big buffs to Madrid's Razor and Wriggle's Lantern here. So now Madrid's deals 40 bonus magic damage to monsters with every attack. By the way, doesn't get that bonus to minions, only to monsters. That is jungle creeps, basically. And Wriggle's Lantern now deals 100 magic damage to monsters with every basic attack. Every one. So no more, oh, will I get Wriggle's procs? Will I get Madrid's procs? You know, no more crossing your fingers and hoping for that 25% chance. I love this change. Always hated that random number generator aspect of, will you get the procs? Will you not get the procs? Now it's a flat number, and this actually buffs Madrid's and Wriggle's quite a bit. So this really helps auto-attacking junglers. That is, champions who build Wriggles, champions who build Madrid's Razors. Junglers who clear the jungle with auto-attacks. Immediate champion that jumps to mind, Shyvana. Tiger Stance Udyr, not Phoenix Stance Udyr. Warwick. Maybe even Nocturne. Nocturne may want to build Wriggles again instead of building that Elder Lizard, Spirit of the Elder Lizard item. So if you clear the jungle with auto attacks, you now want this item because you will clear the jungle really fast. So this is a buff to auto attacking junglers. As I said, Shyvana, Udyr, Warwick, if anyone still plays him. Like I said, big buff to these junglers. They want Wriggles, and they will clear the jungle really fast, and they will have a big advantage on clearing early dragons with Wriggles. Like, sure, you can play, like the recent trend has been for junglers to build Spirit Stone and then build it into either Spirit of the Elder Lizard or build it into Spirit of the Ancient Golem, and you've got like these tanky junglers. But those are junglers that rely on their skills to clear their jungle. Like, think of, I don't know, going back up here, think of someone like, say, Sejuani jungle or Zac jungle. They're not clearing the jungle with auto attacks. They clear it with their skills. And those champions were so strong that they were crowding out the auto attack junglers. This now brings back the auto attack junglers in a huge way. And if anything, this item might be too strong. You know, you play Shyvana, and you've got, you know, all that auto attack, you know, you've got that auto attack reset, and you're dealing 100 magic damage to every monster on every attack. You can clear Dragon in like 5 seconds with this new Wriggles. And that opens up a lot of interesting play, you know, to sneak early dragons and stuff like that. Plus, you've got the ward active. They've also increased the attack damage on Wriggles. Now, granted, it's more expensive, 400 gold more expensive, but they've increased the AD, they've increased the lifesteal, they did reduce the armor. So they want this to be more of an aggressive item, less of a tanky item. But I'm interested to see what this looks like. I want to see Tiger Udyr in the jungle, and I want to see Shyvana jungle with these new items. I want to see how fast they can clear. And it should be fun. It should open up some more stuff. So huge thumbs up. I love these changes. Really good stuff. Okay, now to go along with that, they have, of course, had to change the other spirit items. So if you look at what they did, now the flat damage, still, spirit items are still going to do that same 10 bonus magic damage to monsters. You know, they're not getting the passive of Madrid's Razor and Wriggle's Lantern, but to compensate, they're going to get a damage bonus to monsters increased, you know, instead of 25% up to 30% on all of these items. So, similar idea there. Now, Spirit of the Elder Lizard, way overpowered item. It's getting nerfed. 10 AD reduction from 45 down to 35. Much needed change. It's been sick to death of watching Ezreal run around with Spirit of the Elder Lizard. Spirit of the Spectral Wraith, similar thing. They're nerfing the ability power. They made these jungle items so cost efficient that non-junglers were buying them. You had Spirit of the Spectral Wraith, AP mids running around for the spell vamp, Spirit of the Spectral Wraith, Mordekaiser, and stuff like that. It's just silly. These items were way too strong. The funny thing is, at the beginning of Season 3, they were so weak, no one was building them. And they got buffed and buffed and buffed. And then, oh my god, they're so overpowered. Everyone's building these items everywhere. So they're being nerfed to get more cost in line with other jungling items. So anyway, this is a nerf to the spirit items. Not the Ancient Golem. The Ancient Golem is pretty much fine. But Elder Lizard and Spectral Wraith getting nerfed. Wriggles and Madrid's getting buffed. So as I said, repeated this a number of times, but auto attack junglers getting huge buffs. The sort of tanky junglers are getting a bit of a nerf overall. So we will see how that plays out. But I do like these changes. Another big item change, they are removing Malady from the game. Straight up removing this item from the game because it was in sort of this bizarre place where it didn't really fit on most champions. What they've done is they've taken Malady's passive and they've put it on Nashor's Tooth and Wit's End. Nashor's Tooth has gained the Malady on hit effect. Basic attacks deal bonus magic damage on hit. So Nashor's Tooth is now the AP plus auto attack item. So who builds this? Well, the first one that jumps to mind is Kayle. Always been the champion that builds this. Teemo, in a lot of ways, likes to build this item. Maybe Diana, perhaps. But this is now the auto attack plus AP item. is Gnasher's Tooth. And they've increased the cost because it got that rather sizable passive added to it. Excuse me. Wit's End now has gotten the other passive from Malady, which is basic attacks now steal magic resist from the target, steals 5 MR, and stacks up to 5 times. It's also more expensive as well. So Wit's End is now more expensive to build. But this is pretty interesting because now this is useful on a lot of junglers that, again, are auto attack based junglers. And now they steal MR from the targets that they hit. So again, champions that want this item, Warwick. Wit's End has always been the item on Warwick. And now, I don't know if this passive will apply on his ult. I don't know if this will apply. I would assume that it does, though, because of how Warwick's ult works. So, Warwick's ult now removes, if it works the way I think it does, removes 25 MR from the target. That's a pretty big deal. Again, who else loves Wit's End? Shyvana. Always loved this item. Now she gets to steal magic resist from the target. And remember, Shyvana's damage is almost entirely magic-based. So that's nice. How about Udyr? Well, unfortunately, his damage is now physical. If the Tiger Stance damage still was magical instead of physical, this would be an amazing item on Tiger Stance Udyr. Unfortunately, it is not, but still feels like a good item on him. So again, auto-attacking junglers. They want Wit's End, and they want Wriggle's Lantern. So some really interesting itemization paths opened up for these champs. I'm curious to see what people will do with them, but I want to see these champs played, and I want to see how effective they are. Okay, now, further helping auto-attack junglers in a lot of ways is they've changed the way that the map works on Summoner's Rift. The long-awaited change to the jungle. So what they've done is they have changed the initial spawn timers on all of the camps. Every camp now spawns at 155, not just the blue and red. Wolves, Wraiths, Double Golems, all spawn at 155. I can't overemphasize how badly this has been needed. This has been needed for at least a year, if not longer. If you don't watch professional gaming streams, you might not be as familiar with this, but basically, Blue Side's bottom lane has a humongous advantage, or had a humongous advantage in the past, because they could do double golems at the start of the game, and they would start halfway to level 2. Similar advantage in top lane. Top laners on purple side could start double golems, get level 2 before their opponent, and then they all in them at level 2. And this was happening all the time. It was a major balance problem. So they have fixed this now by, they tried to do this by changing like the leashing rules on double golems. It never worked. Finally, Riot's like, screw it. We're just going to have every camp spawn at 155. And that's what they needed to do, which means that now you don't have that giant disadvantage on purple side. Thank God. Our ranked team, my own group of 5 who plays ranked, we have hated being on purple side for months because it's such a huge disadvantage when the other team can do double golems right at the start of the game. And they start halfway to level 2. We had a game where we were up against a Trist Alistar, and we were purple side. They did double golems at level 1. They hit level 2 before we could possibly hit level 2. Alistar flash pulverizes, headbutts backwards, first blood, bottom lane. You can't do anything. Nothing you can do. All you can do is swap the lanes and send your AD and support to top lane. So they have fixed this, and to compensate, they've increased the experience at the red and blue. This is Ancient Golem, this is the blue buff. Lizard Elder, this is the red buff. They've increased the experience, so now a jungler will still hit level 2. They can do blue and then run immediately to red, and they will get level 3 off that, same as before. And they've increased the respawn timer, so Wolves respawns faster. Wraiths do not respawn faster, but Wolves and Double Golems respawn faster. 50 seconds now instead of 60. So again, for junglers who like to farm the jungle and clear, again, I know I've said these before, but Shyvana, Udyr, junglers that like to sit in the jungle and just farm and scale into late game, jungle camps will be up more often. They're going to be able to clear the camps really fast with the new Wriggle's Lantern. So good stuff for these junglers. Good changes to help them. But the big thing is the obnoxiousness of doing Wraiths or Wolves or double Golems at the start. You can't do them now because they don't spawn for an extra 15 seconds. And that is a long-awaited change. Very, very long-awaited change. So thank you, thank you, thank you, Riot. Okay. Twisted Tree Line, they've enabled more items. Crystal Scar, they have changed some stuff. I'm afraid I do not play Dominion. I can't speak to this. You can just take a look and read this yourself. They've also enabled some items on Howling Abyss, the RM map. Shop distance, they've changed, fixed a bug that caused people to become stuck. Well, that's nice. And Poros have gone through an 80s action movie training montage and now have some resistance to lasers. So I guess they don't die to the fountain laser. Very nice. Other stuff, minor stuff here, just finishing up. Minimap and HUD, the over interface. Player's name will always be drawn last. What that means is you will always appear over allies and enemy health plates. So in other words, you will always see your health bar above anyone else's. That's very nice. They've added some extra stuff in the shop. If you're searching for particular items, D-Shield and D-Blade, D-Ring, I guess that's nice. I don't know who's been searching for spooky ghosts in the shop. I guess someone wanted Twin Shadows. Custom item sets, no longer lose them when you change your summoner name. Key bindings page has been reorganized. That's good to know. The key bindings page I always thought was not very intuitive. Gifting animation updated. Okay, great. Custom game minimaps updated to include unique minimaps for each map. Okay, very nice. League system, you can now spectate players and teams in Challenger tier via an option in the league's menu. That's actually really nice, and I will probably use this, that you can now spectate players who are in challenge. So it's like, hey, I want some footage of, I don't know, the top professional players. It's like, oh, look, Wild Turtle's streaming. It's like, oh, he's in Challenger. I'll just pop in, and now I can spectate that, and I can get footage, to use on my YouTube channel. That's really nice. I don't have to use the Spectate Anyone client, which is like this ghetto third-party client. So that's actually really nice. And this notification to inform players when they're about to hit league point decay for inactivity. Yes, that's very nice. In other words, if you're about to start decaying, it will send you a message saying, hey, you better play a ranked game or you're going to lose league points. So that's very nice as well. Other stuff, this is Tribunal stuff. PvPNet client will warn you after end of game screen if you got reported. It says unsportsmanlike behavior, but I'm sure it's for reports. Will not follow every report. It will be towards people who exhibit uncharacteristic spikes of highly negative behavior. In other words, the game is going to tell you, hey, people are reporting you, knock it off, or you're going to get, you're going to get banned. So that's good. Other mining stuff, loading screen is no longer off center after champion select. Thank you. No longer have to use shift window. Hopefully, I'll believe it when I see it, but hopefully, no longer like the league client appears down here in like the bottom right corner. That happens pretty frequently. A fix that causes it to open in the bottom right, yeah, like I said. Logitech's keyboards, added support. So overall, this is actually a really good patch. I like this patch. Nearly every change is good. Aatrox is a bit questionable, but these are all good changes. The jungle change is long overdue. The nerfs that came out were smart nerfs. And the itemization stuff is all good. Looks good throughout. So I don't have too much more to say than that. This has already been a long enough as it is, but good changes, good patch. I like the idea if they take the time to, sort of slow down, only do patches every 3 or 4 weeks and make them good patches like this. I'm all for that. Everything other than Aatrox's design, which just has me shaking my head, but really everything else is good. One final note, today is a Wednesday. I am not planning on doing the custom games tonight for YouTube. I'm planning on doing them tomorrow on Thursday night, if you're watching this video as it comes out. That's because I want to watch the LCS games. Today is the first day of North American LCS. I want to watch them today, and so we'll do the custom YouTube games tomorrow on Thursday evening instead. So just a little heads up. Anyway, once again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Until next time, take care. I'll see you guys later. Have a great week.